and how Windows works. We also spoke about Linux and how Linux works. But the key elements we would want to do is work with our various platforms. So for a start, we mentioned PowerPoint, which I think is the easiest of everything because we would need to know how we work with our presentations and how each presentation works. So we had two presentations that we had, which was sample presentation and PowerPoint 5. So I'd rather get into examples of how we can work with these. We also get into Excel. We get into examples of how those work and try and touch on each of the elements that we are supposed to know. So when you open PowerPoint for the second time, because this will be a second time, we can see our recent documents, which we've got sample presentation and PowerPoint file for what we did yesterday. We've got examples of what we can use as our PowerPoint. So let's pick what we had yesterday. So we had a PowerPoint file, which was our first document. We had nothing on it. So we want to actually learn how we do our PowerPoint. So let's say we want to do a presentation for whatever aspect we want to work with. We can actually work with PowerPoint. So if you remember yesterday, we spoke about the top sections where if I select each section, I'm sure from where you are, you may not be able to view properly, but this is the home section, the insert, the design, transitions, animations, slideshow, review, view, add-ins, and storyboarding. Okay, so we want to just maybe design something simple. Okay, what we want to design is a simple a topic. Maybe we talk about life at the user. We have a subtitle, a first year's opinion on university life, something along those lines. So these two elements that we've got are our text area or text boxes that we can also add in the event that we want to work with each of these elements. We can also add a new slide. We call it a slide because if you remember when we went to slideshow, we saw these options. Unfortunately, they won't be visible from there, but I'm sure on the video you can be able to see what each element does. So we call this page a slide. If you remember the word yesterday, we said we've got pages, but in PowerPoint we call this a slide. So to view what this then looks like, we need to press F5, and then F5 simply gives us an output of what our slide would look like. However, with our slides, we might need to modify them to suit certain things. So before we even go any further, let's actually play around with our text. So I can highlight my life at the UZ. I go to my home. I can play around with the text. So let's say I pick that text. I also highlight that bit. I change the text again to a different kind of text. Let's say I put it as that. So I can actually modify my text so that it looks that way. As you can see, as it's displayed there, I might not like the background. Okay, so I can go to my insert. No, sorry, my design. I can then pick a design that I want. So let's say I pick that design. You actually then see my PowerPoint presentation take a new design. Okay, so we can also design our PowerPoint slide so that it looks like. If we also hit F5, we'll be able to see how it's then displayed on the screen. So this then becomes part of how we can then be able to work with our slide. Okay. Uh, at the same time, we can also add new slides, whereby we go to Insert, and then we select a new slide, and then we can pick from a range of options that we've got for our slide. So for example, I can put title and content, and then I put whatever it is that I want to put. So the first thing can be class. Okay. You are then telling us whatever it is that you experienced. There are many lecture rooms, and they are all spaced out in various locations. Something along those lines. So we're just coming up with an idea of how our PowerPoint could look like and the things that it could have. We can also have maybe a new slide where we say image of the user, something along those lines. So I'm just going to pick the internet and say University of Zimbabwe, so that we just see how we can get this done. Today my internet should be working, hopefully. And we see how we can play around with our PowerPoint. I think if I go there, I might be able to get a picture or pictures. Okay, my internet is a bit on the slow side, but let's wait for it. So maybe here we can put an image. Let's, whilst we wait, let's just see how we do that. We can simply come to our insert. We then select pictures. This is a picture from a computer, or we can get a picture from the internet, or we can actually do a screenshot. Okay, so try and work with the three options to put an image, since we're expecting an image. And this would be our our second, or rather third slide, including the title one. Let's see if we've got something. Yeah, I think we've got an image there. Also got an image there. We'll pick from one of the images. Okay, maybe let's see if this one. Okay, I don't know if we can use it, but let's just try and get this one. Yeah, I've got a perfect idea of how we can get it. So we've got that image, and we want to put that image here. So we can go to screenshot, and then we go to screen clipping, and then we pick a location, and we can add our image. That's something pretty standard that we can work with. And we've got an image to our PowerPoint presentation. Let's maybe make one more slide where we can say new, we select title only, and we say the end of the presentation, something like that. And then if you want, you can then put a word art and say question. And then the class asks some questions. Right, so a brief run through to our PowerPoint, how we can insert slides, how we can insert images, how we can insert some text, and a little bit of a design. Do we have any questions for PowerPoint, or should I add a bit more? Because from PowerPoint, we want to move on to the next application. Is PowerPoint straightforward? Do you have questions? Do I add more? Or we move on to the next application? By the way, you are here, so you can ask. You can ask. At least you've got the privilege of having some of the presentations available. So it might make life, yes. There is a test where, depending on how it will be structured, I'll have to let you know maybe tomorrow. But we usually give you, or rather, how I do it, I'll give you tasks to do. So we're working with the introduction to Windows, where I'll give you a simple task to sort of take note of what you've learned. Introduction to PowerPoint, I would also give you a task in relation to that. I give you a task for Word and Excel, and a little bit on internet and email, so that at least you go and you practice certain things about those elements. And then in the end, there'll be a written exam where it's just asking you about some of the things that you've experienced working with PowerPoint or Word or Windows. It's usually at the end of week 4. It's the end of week 4, but it's structured differently from faculty to faculty. With our faculty, we usually say at the end of the 4 weeks, but some actually might put it before the end of the 4 weeks. Any other questions? Okay, I will ask a question. We looked at home, we looked at insert and design. But there's transitions, there's animations, there's slideshow, there's review, there's view, there's add-ins, there's storyboard. So if I put these in the question, will you guys be able to answer? Okay. Quick question. What is an animation? He's answered for everyone and said, yes, you can do it. So what is an animation? Okay, so what I would want you guys to do is, you guys are definitely you are past what you are used to, which is going for class, learning whatever you learn, learning in a compressed time. Of course, the time will be almost exactly the same, but the difference now is you are supposed to apply yourselves to certain things. So, for example, with the presentations that you've got with PowerPoint, you then also need to at least learn how certain things work. So part of your learning should also include you figuring out how some of these things work and how you can apply it to your learning. Okay? Because we expect that at this particular point, you are then old enough to even hold your own presentation. So some of these things you might then need to know, okay, what does animations do? We have done whatever we have done, but we haven't actually looked at animation. So you look into it, and then you quickly say, oh, okay, I figured it out. We go to the next, and the next, and the next, and we do it until we are done. So it might not be what you are used to have a lot of notes. Because with this introduction, it's just to help you know or learn the basics of how these applications work. And if we wanted to do something deeper than just what we're doing now, we might not be able to finish because there's just so many things to learn. For example, I can also come here and then you then notice there's a pop-up. There's info, there's new, there's open, there's save as, print, share, export, you name it. For example, I could even then tell you that with PowerPoint, I'm sure you've seen those interactive CDs. You can actually make an interactive CD using PowerPoint. So there's so much to learn. But as part of just what we are doing, you just then need to know how to use PowerPoint for your presentation. Okay. So, like you said, I'm still waiting for an answer before we proceed. You said you would know. So what is animation without Google? Yes. Perfect. That's an answer that's good enough. But I was expecting that we did F5, right? Which gave us that. And if we are moving through our slide, what we see as we are moving is our animation, how it just changes from slide to slide. So we can actually modify that and do whatever it is that we're hoping to do in our presentation. So food for thought, and you can practice some more as you go through the application. Okay? So that's one application. Let's move to the next application and see what that does. So the next application we want to work with is our Microsoft Word, where I think we'll try and speed up some of the things that we've got. For those who I sent a video link, there's a bit more detailed video that I put on what our Microsoft Word does and how we can work with our Microsoft Word. So the next application we want to actually work with is our Microsoft Word. So we had something that we opened yesterday. I think we'll just reference that and start adding some text or some context to our text. Okay, so we have a word bar. So to make it easier, we'll not be putting content, but we'll get some text and some values that we might need to work with. So in your Microsoft Word, you are meant to learn about how to do certain things. So for some of you who are already working on it, you might find some of these things useful and interactive for you to work with. Some of the things that you find in documents are pretty much done in your Microsoft Word. So for example, let me see if I've got a document that's got something that you can use. Okay, I don't think some of these documents I can use there. Let's create something of our own and we build from there. So the first thing that we would want to work with is how our Microsoft Word functions. As you would have noticed, when I started, I just went to my start. I looked for the icon, which looks like that. I double clicked on it and it opened my Microsoft Word. And then when it had opened, I then selected the option that I wanted, which was the file that we created yesterday, and it displayed on the screen. However, we want to put certain things in order. Okay? Let's say we are working on a document. We want to put certain things in order. So the first thing we usually want on a document is a cover page. So how do we put a cover page? We simply go to Insert, we select Cover Page, and then we have a list of cover pages that we can pick. So for example, I can pick that one as my cover page. You then notice that it puts some text. So it's got the document title, it's got the document subtitle, it's got an abstract, it's got the author. Okay? So these are not fixed. You can actually play around with some of these things. So for example, we've got our cover page, which looks like that. But we want to say you have borrowed my computer and you want to use my computer your account, but you don't want it to give out my name. How do you do that? You just simply go to File. You then go to where it says Author, and you can remove me as the author of the document. And then you then put your name. Let's say you are Peter Chemere. Oh, my mistake. I'm actually connected to the internet, so it's actually checking whether this person exists. But since it's fictitious, we don't need to worry about that. I've already changed the author. At the same time, I can also add an extra author if I want. So, for example, if you're doing a project with so many other people, you can also add them in this particular section. But the fact that I've changed the author of the document, if I come back to my document, it then actually changes the name of the author. So that's something that you can be able to work with in terms of your Microsoft Word. However, let's just add some context to it. So let's say you are doing your document title and you want to add the title of this document. Okay? Let's say you are working on the effects of waterborne diseases, something like that. And then we then put a study of communal area based diseases, something along those lines. And then you have your abstract saying whatever it is that you want to say, and you proceed from there. So, like I mentioned before, we would want to put some context. So we can't actually be typing out. We'll be using The next thing that we are also supposed to be working with, which is the internet, and we work with our Microsoft Word, including our internet, and how certain things will then work. Excuse the spellings. Uh, computers have ruined our lives to the point that we now look to answers from them. Okay, so let's get to the next stage. So we've got our first page. It's looking great. We now need to put the next page. Okay, so I then select insert again. I go to blank page. I now have a blank page. My mistake, I was on the wrong view. So I added too many pages, but it's still fine. So this is our first page. This then becomes our second page. On our second page, we want to put maybe an app. Okay, so we have app track like that. We move to the next page. We want to put a table of content like that. So we've got abstract and table of content. However, we can't just put them without doing certain things first. So the first thing we need to do is we need to mark our elements for them to be able to be used in a table of contents. So how do we do that? We simply go back to our home. We select abstract, and then we select heading 1. And then the moment we select heading 1, we notice on the left, we now have abstract showing as part of the heading. But at the same time, we've also got pages and results. So which then means as we are working with our document, we can be able to view certain things as we proceed in our document. Okay, so for now, we're just going to be setting up certain things that we would need, and we will show how these work at a later stage. Okay, so table of contents as well, we can mark it and put it as a heading 1, and then we've appended abstract and table of contents. Okay, so those are our 3 pages so far. By the way, you can stop me if I'm moving too fast. You can ask questions. If not, I've got plenty for you. Okay, let us proceed. We are still together? Yes or no? Okay. How did I say we put the password, by the way? Password. Did I mention anything about a password? Okay, so we're together. Let's proceed. Let's proceed. Okay, we want to add some stuff. It will make sense. It will make sense. Let's proceed. So we want to have maybe the first chapter. Chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. Okay, so we want to make this easy. We don't want to be able to be left behind. We want to make this easier. So we go online. We quickly look for lorem ipsum, which is just random text generated by the internet. And we can use that text to add information. Okay, so whilst we're also waiting for that to work, there's certain things that we had actually not introduced as we started, which is when we are working with our cursor, This black thing that you can see there is our cursor, where we can be able to select certain sections of our page. So, for example, I can put my cursor at any point, not very clear from the back, but I'm sure if you're going through this, you'll be able to see the cursor that I'm talking about. At the same time, we can also be able to highlight our text. We can be able to copy and paste certain things. We can also be able to play around with the whole section of the document. We can also play around with the insert, the design, the layout, references, mailings, etc. Okay, so I'm sure our page is done by now. Yes, we've got something. So we've got information that looks like this. And this is what we've got in our lorem ipsum. Okay, so we want to just be able to get certain things and put them to our document. So here's how we'll do it. We'll simply highlight some text, and highlighting is simply putting our cursor to a specific location. We right click and then we select everything that's there. After doing that, we copy and we paste in a location that we would want. So I put my cursor on 1, I press enter, I paste my information so that I've got a paragraph. I do that for the next chapter. I do that for the next chapter. So I've got my text. So simply put, we are then saying we are copying and pasting information to our document. So at the same time, let me just press enter so that chapter 2 starts on a different page. And chapter 3 also should start on a different page. Okay, so like I said, we'll be going back and forth with some of these things. So for chapter 1, we also highlight chapter 1, we select heading 1. For chapter 2, we also highlight chapter 2 and select heading 1. For chapter 3, we do the same. And we've got our chapter. Okay. So why were we doing all that? If we come back to our table of contents, we said table of contents is at the beginning, which is there. So what we want to do now is we want to see how we insert a table of contents. Bearing in mind, we are marking each heading individually as a table of contents item. So we go to references. Under references, we select table of contents. We select the table of contents that we've got. And you then notice that it gives us elements that we want there. So we've got abstract, table of contents, chapter 1, chapter 2, and chapter 3. So that's the reason why we are marking each element for the table of contents. And as we have done that, we have pretty much added our table of contents to our document or onto our document. So that's how we work with our table of contents. Are we still together? Please, can I have questions if you've got questions? Questions? Okay, let us proceed. You have answered me without answering. Okay, for abstract, let's just put some abstract. We copy and we paste that. What some text that's going on. So outside of this, we then need to explain how of some of these things work. Because you then find a lecturer like me who will give you something to go and do, and I'll just give you a list of instructions to say, I want it done this way. I want you to have a line space of this. I want you to have a font of this type. I want you to have a bullet. I want you to have image. I want you to have table. I want you to have whatever onto this document. So let's say I then tell you that I want the following for your document. I want your line spacing to be 1.5. I want your font to be Times New Roman. I want your bullets and certain things done to your document. So you are not sure how you do that. Okay? So let's say I want to then let you know what is a paragraph. So a paragraph, simply put, is if you see this line all the way until the end, that is what we are referring to as a paragraph. Let me actually increase the size so that from the back it's a bit visible. So this is what we are referring to as a paragraph. And then what am I talking about in terms of the line spacing? So from this line to that line, there's a space in between. So that line spacing is what I'll then be telling you to actually work with to do whatever I would have requested you to do. From there, we are then also saying this text itself has a name. So you now need to actually change the text to suit what I'm hoping to see. Okay? So I then tell you, select the text like that, go to home like that, select on styles, and then under styles, just select clear all. Okay? So what that then does is it simply clears everything. So it removes any type of formatting that has been added to my text. Okay, so that's one way of clearing whatever formatting is there. I've also mentioned that I want your text to be Times New Roman. So I select the entire text like that. I go to where it says failure to pronounce that word properly. We want to look for a font called Times New Roman. So I type out Times New Roman, and then you will actually notice that my text changes in appearance. So that is what we are calling Times New Roman. I also mentioned that I want to have a line spacing of 1.5. So I can select the paragraph again. I go to paragraph and I change the spacing to 1.5. You then get to see that the in terms of the space. So that is the space between the first line and the second. And then that is what it will then look like. Okay? Question. Question. Okay. If there are no questions, we may proceed. We are finishing at what time today? 3. Okay. Let's try and work with it. The reason why I'm saying that is we still need to learn quite a lot. And like we said yesterday, we are starting as if we're starting from the basics. So some of the basics do take time. Some of the basics are quite easy. But we'll try and compress as much as is possible into what we can. We were supposed to have a very long lesson, an extremely long lesson. But I know when it's a lecture of this kind, sometimes it might not be the best option that we've got. Okay, let us proceed. So, what is the next thing that we want to learn about our text? We already know that we've got a paragraph. We can do spacing. We can work with the line. Okay. So let's say we want to put just some extra elements in our document. So let's say, for example, we want to put some points. Okay. Let's say we want to then say there are the following issues that were found. By the way, this is just some random text. New infections because of migration, maybe. New cases due to rains. New territory in research. Something along those lines. So we've got new infections because of migration, new cases due to rain, new territory in research. So we want to make this information into points. So we go to where it says paragraph, we select our bullet points. We can pick any type of point that we've got, and then we'll see how our points are displayed. So that is how we'll then put our points. So our points fall under our paragraphs, and this then means we can be able to put our points in that particular order, or in a specific kind of order that we are hoping to see. Okay, that's part of our paragraph. Let's add some color. Let's add some color. So let's say we want to change some text. Okay, we already see that the first bit of the text, it is different from the other section of the text. Why? Because of it's a bit more pronounced. So that kind of text is actually called bold. So that text is actually bold. So let's say we want to make another section of text bold. How do we do it? We simply select, for example, our standard. We then go to where we've got to be there, and then we can make our text bold. Bold. B-O-L-D. Bold. Okay. We can also select a certain part of our text, like for example, that text. We also select I, and then it changes in appearance. We can then see that it takes a slight tilt, and that is our italics. We can also take another section of our text, for example, that section, and we put U to make our text underline. So we can actually make it bold, italic, or underline. That's part of what our text does, or what we can do to our text. Okay, pretty simple. The next one is also scrambled. We can also select font color. And if I select that, I can also change the text to a slightly different color, not the same as the color that we want. And so a bit of the basics. A bit of the basics on what we can do. But some might then ask, what else can we add to our? I'm going to add some of the things that we saw in PowerPoint. We can also use it in our work. So for example, in PowerPoint, we realized that we could add an image, right? And where did we go in PowerPoint? We went to insert. So we've got insert in Word as well, where we can now be able to put an image. So let's say I come to that point. I want to put an image. I simply go to insert picture. I then select a picture. So let's say I've got this picture that I just found randomly, and I want to insert it. So after doing that, I see my picture is there. Let me reduce the size so that we can see our picture better. There is my picture. Okay, I'll be having a picture, and that is what it looks like. I think let's change the picture. It's too big. Let's see if we can get a picture from here. Oh, we actually did something interesting in PowerPoint. I think we can do the same here, where I go to insert, I select screenshot, I select screen clipping, and let's say I just pick that point, and yes, same result. We get a picture. I think that's better because it's smaller and we can see all the angles of the picture. So what is the advantage of putting pictures? A picture, we can then be able to play around with it and do certain things to our picture. So for example, we can add a caption to our picture. So if I right click on the picture, I go to insert, I can put a caption and call this example image, like that. Okay, what is the purpose of actually having a caption? When you're also doing a table of figures, you then use your figure or your table or your illustration as part of your list. So we don't only do a table of contents, we can also do a table of figures, of tables, and other lists. Okay, so we can be able to then play around with our image. At the same time, I'm sure you've seen documents where there's text around the image. We can also play around with how we put text around our image. So let's say I come up and I copy this text. I copy it, I paste it right next to my picture. You actually notice my text avoids my picture. It sort of goes below my picture, but it's gone below the figure. We don't want that to be the case. So let me undo that. I put my text there, and my text is below my picture. However, let's say I want to edit how that appears. I can right click, I go to wrap text, and I can then say I want it square. So the moment I put my text to be square, it actually goes around my image. Or I can play around with my image to get what I'm hoping to get on my image. However, if I put a square, my figure then goes to the, is that right? I think that's my right. And then it tells me figure one, example image, and then the text is around the image if that is what I want. If I don't want that, I can also right click. I go to wrap text. I can say tight. And then tight also compresses my image, but it still goes around the image. So it's things that you will then need to know. Sometimes I will not be there. You will now be doing your course. And I may also be occupied with my own courses. But some of these things are key for you to know how to play around with an image, how to make your image look and do whatever it is that you're hoping to get. So that is how we can also play around with our image. Okay, that's part of how we can work with images and how we can put images into our document. Okay, I have said quite a lot. I'm sure there is question. There has to be question. There must be question. Yes. Mm. Yes, it will be possible, but not necessarily what we need to know as of now. We can work with a certain attribute called a marker, where you can actually fit that condition to actually pick all the letters that you'd want and put them that way. That's one way of doing it. Or we can use um, the search option. Right. You can use the search option where it takes you to the navigation, and then you put the word the, and then it picks all the words. And then you individually have to pick each of the these that are present and then change that. That's one other way of doing it. That's a simpler way of doing it. Because if we get into the macro one, it is not as easy as that. It will then require something called pseudocode, which I think, yeah, I can end there. I can end there. Yes. Any, yes. Okay. If you've made a mistake, there is something so simple, which is up here. Unfortunately, it won't be so visible. You can actually click on it, which is undo, and then it undoes it. Would wrong choice of words. It changes back to the previous format. Okay? So, for example, if I click on it, it actually changes the last thing that I made changes to and reverts to something before that. But on that actual same note, we can also be able to see how some of these things have been working. So, like for example, if I click on my clipboard, I can see what is on my clipboard. So, as many times as I have done certain things, or if I'm following a certain sequence, I can be able to see some of the things I would have copied or cut, or done whatever I would have done whilst I'm doing it within my clipboard. So it will also be helpful in terms of your undo and your redo. So in some cases, you might want to redo certain things. However, there are certain things that you can't do that too. So it now depends on what exactly you're working with and how you are doing what you are doing on your document. I don't know if I've answered you well. Yes. Okay. Um, from the screenshot, I simply went to insert. Under insert, there's illustrations. Then I selected screenshot. Then from there, I selected screen clipping. So it takes me to that. I then pick whatever it is that I want to pick. Let's say I want this title. I can just take that and it actually puts the image onto my Microsoft Word. Okay, so it has to be anywhere on the document, any location that you'd want. You go to insert, screenshot, screen clipping. You select what you would want to put. Maybe I can put those. And it puts an image of whatever it is that you have copied. So it's an easier way of actually adding image. Although not recommended because sometimes some images are not meant to be copied. So you can be able to copy it, but yeah, in some cases, not very recommended. Any more questions before we add a bit more of some slightly complex stuff? We just want to add a bit more and see where we go. Okay. So fortunately or unfortunately, we are a little bit pressed for time, but let's see if we can just add some more to our learning. Okay, so whilst we're doing this, we might also need to know that we can be able to style certain things about our text and how our text can be modified. So, for example, let's say I want to put what we put in our PowerPoint where we had some stylish text. I can select my A, I pick a type of text that I want. Supposed to be adding the text. Where is the text? Or maybe okay. Added it, but there was no text to show. Okay. So let's say this is my shadow text, like that. So I had actually gone to my A and then I started putting my text there, and that is what my text looks like. At the same time, I can also highlight my text. I simply select my text, I select the highlighter, and then it highlights the text that I would have put on my particular document. So some of these things might not be necessary, but you can play around with them and see how they work. Let's add some more content. So let's say you want to put a table and you've got some specifications that you'd want for your table. So we go to insert, we select table, and then you can select any of these elements and create a table, but that would be the easier part. Let's go to where it says insert table, and then it gives us a pop-up that looks like that. So we then need to know certain things about our table. So our table is a collection of cells, and those cells make up rows and columns. So when we're putting our insert table, we then ask for the number of columns that you want, the number of rows that you want, whether you want them to be a fixed size, whether you want them to fit to function or fit to a window. So by default, we get 5 columns and 2 rows. But we don't want to create a support table. We want to be able to make our own. So I'd want to have 10 rows and 5 columns. If I click on OK, we then see what that table looks like. So our table will look like that, where we've got our 10 rows and 5 columns. So this is what we refer to as the column, this is what we refer to as the row, and this section here, what we're actually referring to as a star. So that is 5 columns and 10 rows, and where the row and the column meet is our star. Okay, so that then marks our table. So maybe another question that some of you might then have is, we've got a table of contents and we've got this table. What is the difference? There's basically no difference with our table and our table of contents, because they almost work the same way. The only difference with our table of contents is we then have what are known as hyperlinks that link us to specific elements within our document. So we can also have a hyperlink that links to our table. So how do we then do that? We use the caption that we used in the previous section where we were working with our image. So how do we do a caption for our table? We simply do the exact same thing. We right click on the top of the table. We go to insert caption. And since we had worked with a figure before, it then tells us it's a figure. But we want to actually change that and put a table. And then we then call our table maybe 5 by 10 table, something along those lines. We click on OK, and then we've got our caption for our table. However, the caption, we can choose where we put it. We can either put it on the top or on the bottom, and we proceed from there. So we can put our caption on a table and our caption on a image. And are we still together? Yesterday we had a short break, which was 20 minutes. I think today I can give you 10 minutes, and then we proceed so that we finish at 4. And yes, one last question before you go. Huh? You want to put a title. A title for the table. For the table, I don't think we can put a title per se. We can put maybe some text that's close to our table, that's not a caption, but maybe just text that is similar to what we've got as highlight text, and we can work with that text as part of our table. I think that way it would work. Okay, it's 3:15. I think at 25 past, you guys can come back and we round up the little bit of time we've got left.
Okay, guys, I'm just gonna add this bit to what we were learning. I'm realizing that the last thing that we did was actually not recorded. So I'm just gonna quickly add a few things, maybe a few extra. Since I am not doing a physical class lecture with you guys, just add the last few things that we did. So we did insert citation where we were when to add a new source. And let's give our source the following information. So we want an author, which can be myself. We want a title, Introduction to Computing. Okay, and then we call this digital skills. Okay, journal name, we can call it Basics of Computing. That the year is 2019. Pages we want 56 to 64. We click on OK, and then we have our reference. However, we can also make a bibliography or a reference, and then that is now our reference to what we've got, where we've got the names of whatever it is that we're working with. This is now a journal that was a book, so that is what we would get. From there, we can also maybe put a table of figures, right? I select my table, I click on OK, and then we've got a figure that we've got, which was just table 1, and then that is also how we put a table of figures. We can also add a caption. So I can put a caption and name whatever the caption is, even though we don't have an image like I previously said. So we can also add that and have that work with some of the elements that we've got. So the previous figure that we had put, it's not showing in our table of figures. Maybe it's also how we marked it and how we used it. But quickly to then end off what we had our mail merge. So we go to mailings, we go to start mail merge, we select letters, we then select enter recipients. Since we already have a list, we don't need to do what we did in class. So we use this list, we select users. From there, we add an address block and we get that showing up. We click on OK. We also put a greeting line, click OK. We then paste some text. I think that was the text we've got. We go to preview letters so that we see the owners of the letter. And then we go to finish, either print or send email messages, edit individual letters. That's how we're actually working with our mail merge. I've just sort of made it faster in just explaining because we lost a bit of our time. Some of the things that I said in class, I don't remember now, but that's pretty much how we do it. Maybe for the benefit of those who might want to see how we did a new list. So we go to type a new list, and then in this particular list, we put the titles, we put a name, put a surname, we put an address, we put the next entry, we also put an address, we click on OK, and then we're now supposed to save our list. So we can say this is the second list, we click on save, and now we have a list. So at the same time now with our list, we can also have an address block, and we can also have a greeting line like that. So we can then preview our letters to see the individuals that we've got. So that's pretty much how it then works. We can finish a mail merge and get certain things done. I'll try and work on some more content that I can add for you guys. But so far, I think this would be good enough to round up what we did in class. I hope you were taking notes and you were following as we were doing what we were doing.